Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my review for Marvel's What If, Episode 4. So, this episode went from Steins Gate to Castlevania Season 4 to Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, all in one episode. Seriously, it's like, it gave me vibes of all of those. Uh, this was easily one of the better episodes of this series, and definitely a return to form after that lesser last episode. Not that the last episode was bad, it was just definitely weaker than the first two, and definitely weaker than this one as well. It's the weakest episode so far. But this one was very good. And so obviously we're going to get into spoiler talk here, so just letting you know ahead of time. We will begin with spoilers in three, two, one, now. So, this episode is what if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands? And it's a very misrepresented title because it's like, I get what they're going with, but by losing his heart, what it means is that he loses his girlfriend. Um, the big divergence point in this one is that um, she's in the car with him when it crashes. Instead of losing his hands, she dies. That's what losing his heart in this case means. Which, I mean, again, I get it. I understand. I've lost loved ones, and it's like, so I know what that feels like. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It's just I felt like they could have worded it a little differently. But either way. Um, so everything else kind of starts going according to plan. Within this world, this is what drives him to become the Sorcerer Supreme. He goes through all the same steps, but eventually decides to use the Eye of Agamotto to try and reverse time to save her life. Despite warnings about this, he does this and it fails. He's not able to save her. So he tries again and he fails and he tries again and again and again. And it I said this reminded me of Steins Gate, and it's like in Steins Gate where Okabe keeps going back in time to try and stop Mayuri's death. It's very much the same thing. He keeps trying all these different ways, but she keeps dying in different ways because she is basically destined to die. It is a fixed point in time within this timeline, within this universe. Um, he ends up getting into a confrontation with the Ancient One, who ends up splitting him into two, which we don't know at first. We find that out later on, but it splits him into two. The darker side to him continues on for most of this episode, and we get to the lighter side later on. Uh, but the darker side, he starts to, instead of just going back and trying to continue to try, he starts to do some more studies in regards to Cagliostro, who knew about this ancient sorcerer who knew about all this time stuff, and he kind of realizes that he needs to do whatever he can here to bring her back. He goes to these kind of obscene lengths and starts to just basically start to summon these interdimensional hell beasts and absorb them into his body to gain more power, but corrupting him more and more each time. Eventually, we see the light Stephen, the light Doctor Strange, and he ends up seeing the world is starting to crumble around him, starting to just cease to exist, basically. So he ends up having to confront the evil Doctor Strange, and we have an evil twin battle. Uh, and the first thing I thought, the first connection I thought was Scott Pilgrim versus the World with Nega Scott. Um, but there's a lot of things you could name. There's a lot of movies and shows out there where there's an evil twin kind of situation. Um, so it's kind of funny in that regard. And just the even going backwards, just the entire thing about him just kind of going against his morals and taking in all these hell beasts and doing like and going to every extreme he can just to get her back is very similar to Castlevania season 4, specifically Saint Germain, who goes against his morals and beliefs and does everything he can to be able to reunite with his lost love. It's like these connections are really fun to find, but to see them integrated into this story in such a seamless way is really fascinating. Um, so after the fight between the good and the evil Doctor Strange, the evil one wins and absorbs the good one into himself, basically finally making him complete in power to be able to do what he needs to do. He succeeds in bringing her back to life, but as he was warned, it causes the entire universe to basically collapse in on itself. And he puts up this shield around him and his girl. I can't remember her name for some reason, but he puts a shield around them to try and protect them from the collapsing universe, and even reaches out to the Watcher himself for help because the Watcher had spoken earlier in the episode and he noticed it, which was super meta. But now he's actually talking to the Watcher and everything. We hear the Watcher actually tell him, like, no, I can't interfere in this. I can't do this, dude. Um, and it's like the first time the Watcher has actively gotten involved in communicating with a character in one of these stories, which is really interesting. But we see the entire universe collapses until it's just one singular point, that being the kind of gem like structure that Doctor Strange created around himself and his girl. She ends up fading from the universe, leaving only him there, presumably for all of eternity. And it's a really tragic story. It is. He lost the love of his life and went to the most extreme measures to try and bring her back. And yeah, it's like you can kind of understand, but you also see how it's a bad thing. As hard as it is, as painful as it is, death is a part of life, and sometimes it comes sooner for people. Sometimes it's painful, and sometimes it's not fair. In fact, a lot of time it's not fair. And a lot of times it's going to hurt us and it's going to scar us and we're going to feel that pain. But trying to stop it like this, obviously not really realistic, but still, trying to stop it like this isn't going to help anything. It's not actually going to help. We have to learn to accept these horrible things and move on from them. And as unfortunate as it is, this is a story about accepting the pains and losses in your life. Even when you don't want to, even when it hurts more than anything else could. And I think it's handled extremely well. Now, obviously, this was not Benedict Cumberbatch voicing Strange here. It was super obvious most of the time, though there were a couple small points where he did sound like Cumberbatch. There were a couple small points where he did have, where his voice was very similar. And the people working on the show have already have said in the past that they tried to get the voices as accurate as possible, um, for those who couldn't or didn't return. So it's like I think they did a good enough job, because we still had Tilda Swinton, we still had Benedict Wong, like they were still there. Um, it's mainly just Strange with this episode, and he the voice actor did good. I don't know who it was, but he did good. I could probably look it up, but I'm not gonna take that time right now. um, the there was some pretty good creativity with this one too. The different hell beasts that Strange summoned were pretty interesting, and the idea that one of them is how the evil version of Doctor Strange in this timeline got his cape is kind of interesting and funny. But we one of the hell beasts as well was the same tentacle monster that we saw in the Captain Carter episode, the one that Red Skull summoned, and that Peggy had to defeat when she headed into the future and everything. So that's a funny little bit of almost continuity with this series, which is weird because this series doesn't have continuity. That's the point. But that's kind of fun that the same creature appeared in two different uh, episodes of this, in two different timelines and universes as well. I just find that really fun, really fascinating. Um, this one, I would say, was the second most emotional of these episodes too. Only beaten out by the T'Challa episode, and only because of Chadwick Boseman. If it wasn't because of Chadwick Boseman, the T'Challa episode wouldn't have been as emotion driven as it was, but it was, and that's what elevated that one for me. But otherwise, this one was extremely emotional, um, very well acted, really interesting, well written premise, and I feel like it succeeded in showing the dangers of not letting go. Obviously, in real life, it's gonna be different. um, in real life, it could ruin your life. Still, it could destroy relationships with people and so much more like that. But obviously, they were showing it in more of a fantastical way to fit in with the MCU and with Doctor Strange. But the idea is still there. The lesson still fits. As hard of a lesson, again, as it is something that a lot of people need to hear. And again, being someone who has dealt with loss, I've lost family, I've lost friends. And I do mean by death, not just like people leaving or whatnot. I've had friends and family die, and it hurts greatly. And I still miss them. And to a point, do I kind of wish that I could reverse that they wouldn't have died? Yeah, I think all of us would. But I also understand how dangerous of a thought that is. And I understand that I can't just wallow in that pain forever, that I need to be able to continue on with my life for my sake and for others' sakes. This episode was good, really, really good. and is continuing to prove to me that this series, What If, is a very great idea. Based off of the comic books of the same title, I think it was just a smart idea to bring this in. And obviously, having it all centered around the entire multiverse thing that started with the Loki series and is going into Multiverse of Madness, is going into all these other movies and stuff, Spider Man. Uh, so it's like, I think that this is a really, really good direction for the MCU to be going. And having this What If series just kind of gives us all of these different alternate universes in such an amazing way. And I'm very excited to see what else we get with this series, with this season, and maybe even beyond. Hopefully, we'll get more seasons. There's so much they could do with this. So, yeah, tell me in the comments below, what did you think of episode 4 of Marvel's What If? Did you love it as much as I did? Did you see those connections to other stuff that I did? Um, or did you see connections to other things that I didn't even think of? Let me know down in the comments below, and thank you so much for tuning in. For now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.